we do have a lot to talk about, and there are many reasons for us to be excited this week
Yeah,
because we are going to
absolutely.
open
Yeah.
your solo exhibition, Everybody Hates Exhibitions, that I was grateful and honored to have had the opportunity to curate and work on with you and with your amazing team.
Thank you.
Um, and, I thought that this could be a good opportunity to have this conversation with you about your own path and your work, because I think that people know a lot of things about you, but they don't necessarily um, fully understand how photography plays into everything that you're doing and how memory plays into
Yeah.
everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
So just to give the logistics away, the show is going to open this Thursday at the Los Angeles Center of Photography, LACP, in downtown LA. We're going to be there 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to raise a toast, maybe more than one, who knows.
We'll stop short of a fight.
Probably. So it'll be so wonderful to have this opportunity to celebrate you and your work in this way, and I really can't wait.
Right.
And I will say, I know I curated the show, but I will say that the gallery looks really good, and it could be. I mean, I can't wait to share it with the world far and wide. So
Yeah, I am. I'm really excited.
maybe we can start at the beginning. I mean, I should just name the reason why we thought that this year could be a good year to have this exhibition happening,
Yeah.
because we've just marked the 20th anniversary for the iconic TV show that you co-created and directed and wrote for, Everybody Hates Chris.
Right.
We'll get to the title of the exhibition a little bit later on and how does it connect to all of this. Um, and the main content for the show are photographs that you took while on set.
Right.
So maybe we can start with the images. Maybe we can start with you looking at these images here and now. Can you walk us through the experience of looking back at images from set and how did that feel like?
Well, carrying a camera around just as sort of a practice, you know. I'm watching things, I'm noticing, and always kind of looking for images, and that's just a curiosity, right?
Mhm.
But finding myself on the set there, by that time I had worked on the HBO Chris Rock show, and we'd done a couple of films together. So, in particular, with my experience with Chris, I'd already kind of had a history of documenting my time around him on the set of the various things we worked together. And those photos were never Chris centric, so to speak, right? It was always just, whatever the other stuff. So, I have a ton of photos from our time together on Head of State, and not as many on Down to Earth, but I have some even from the set of Pootie Tang, right? And from the HBO, from the Chris Rock show. And then some other images from our earlier time on the road on tour together. So I've kind of had an experience of photographing in and around this environment, this creative environment that I had with Chris. So that coming to the show, that was just an extension of it. So it wasn't new, but the
Yeah.
people were new. Right. And so I think maybe the fact that that's how I came in from the outset, already curious, already, making photographs. People saw me like that from day one. So it wasn't like at some point I showed up with a camera and it's like, hey, let's take some cool pictures, And I mean, again, I try to be careful about the way I characterize other people's ideas and experiences around, what images they want to make and why.
Yeah,
But for
absolutely.
me, um, I have a long held disconnect from the memory around a lot of experiences that I
Mm,
had.
mm.
So I come into certain situations thinking about, documenting, right? But I don't necessarily approach the experience from a documentary perspective because I'm not looking for reportage. I'm not looking for something to tell somebody else about, right? I'm looking for things that resonate for me for one reason or another, and be it form or light or a moment or an energy. Sometimes it's just a physical prop. Whatever those things are, to just kind of spark memory, that spark a sort of connection. Those are the things. And sometimes it's sitting on the outside, I'm the vicarious experience of, I like, sometimes I'm looking at situations thinking, I wonder what it would be like if I was able to be one of those people, or
Hmm.
be able to have the type of relationship these people are having with each other, because I've seen evidence of it, and I've even helped to create this, and yet it's not fundamentally a part of who I am and how I've lived. So um
It's really
that.
interesting. You bring up a really important point. I mean, there there's a number of perspectives around that, right? Sometimes we think about photography as what disconnects you from the experience, right? You pull up a camera, so
Yeah,
you're immediately sucked into the experience of, now I'm capturing this moment and I'm participating in it. But then you get photographers like Nan Golden, I think, was the most famous one to have said that the camera is in fact what allowed her to feel like she's participating at a certain moment, that her friends just gotten to know her as Nan with the camera, because that was her way of actually participating in the
yeah.
experience. And I'm curious if that resonates with you in any
No,
way.
absolutely, because I don't particularly care for most images that people make with me in the picture, right? I don't, because I pose, and I'm self-conscious or self-aware in a
Yeah.
lot of ways that I don't like, right? I don't like posing myself, with other people. Now, this is odd because I have probably taken, I don't know, that at least several hundred, if not something thousand selfies, right? I photograph myself
You did it,
relentlessly.
but you don't like it. You did it, but you felt like you have to do it.
Well, so here's the thing. This is the weird thing. I have them. I don't show them to anybody. Every now and again, I find a
Mm,
reason to use one in a post, but typically these aren't images that anybody sees, and I don't tell anybody about them.
yeah.
So this sort of way of relentlessly recording myself, in the places where I go, is almost kind of cementing my own kind of experience around. I was at this place, I was at that place, I went here, I went there. And it's just for me. So I can remember, what I did. But when I'm in images that other people are making, like I said, I tend to feel self-conscious. I tend to be self-aware. And that kind of makes me, I don't know, back out of it, back away from it. So that's not what connects me. But when I'm not in the image and I'm making it, now I have a lot more sensory memory around the circumstances,
Yeah.
around the moment, sometimes about why I thought to make the image, what I was doing before, what I was doing after that. When they say a picture is worth a thousand words, in a lot of ways, for me, that's absolutely true. So my connection comes to a lot of things from making those images, and that cements a memory as opposed to separating me from it.
Yeah.
Like when you're watching a band on stage and they're like, "Why are you looking at your camera? You should be looking at us." And yes, absolutely. But if you go the other route of going, well, I'm making an image now for a particular reason, and I can think of some of the ones that I've made, like in shows and concerts and things like that. They
Yeah.
cement memory for me. They don't separate me from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to also talk about the images themselves and how they relate to your memory, because a lot of the images on view, I want to suggest, feel in many ways like a rolling self-portrait of your relationship, not just with the people themselves, even though that's a really important part of that, but
Yeah.
also with the narratives that the show was trying to articulate about um, a certain moment in time and about a certain experience of growing up. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how memory, it played such a pivotal role in the show itself. If you can talk about how important memory had been to the experience of the show, and then if that played into how you're thinking about these images now.
Well, it's weird because in a lot of ways the memory for me is, I'm going to call it a false one. And what I mean by that is, uh, particularly in the case of the show, that family structure is not the one that I had growing up.
Yeah.
It was quite unlike that. Yeah, my mother and father split up probably when I was about 4 years old, something like that. Um, a few years after that, my older brother, I was the youngest of three from my mother's second marriage. She had 8 kids total, five in the first, three in the second,
Hmm.
and her personal tragedy was that uh, her youngest son at the time passed away when he was 4. So, ultimately there ended up being 7 of us. But I didn't even meet my older sisters
Mm.
from the first marriage until I was like 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah. That's
And
a,
she kept them away from us on purpose.
on purpose.
Yes, yeah, she was making this separation between the family that she'd had and this
Mm.
this new one that she'd formed. And to this day, I don't
Mm.
entirely know the reasons why, but
Mhm.
that's what she did. So in looking at how memory played into the family, I think in a lot of circumstances, writing story and informing character, for me, it was a version of wish fulfillment,
Mm.
right? Even when there were difficult circumstances and, borderline catastrophes and tragedies, when all of these things, happened, I kind of got a glimpse into, what might it have been like if I'd had, a grandfather that said this, or a family that came around and did that, that they chastised you when you went this way, but supported you when you did this other thing. And I just didn't have any of those structural realities. So in writing it, like I said, it was just kind of writing a version of wish fulfillment. I understood the dynamics, in
Yeah.
Black family. I've been around and amongst a bunch of, my friends have, these structurally familial households, mom, dad, the whole thing, grandfathers, cousins, all this stuff. I got like 20 cousins. I had a cousin I didn't meet until I was 55 years old.
That's a lot of cousins.
I'm just saying. So the memory of it is idealistic.
Mm. And I'm now realizing something about how you've approached this project, this exhibition, which I don't think I fully articulated before this conversation, which is that, and I think we talked about this in a variety of ways when we were working on the show, but that part of what you're doing with this project, we're bringing all of those photographs into one place. And we haven't mentioned yet that there's also some Easter eggs in the space,
Yeah.
in the form of other photographs from your private archives, that you're pushing against that separation, that you're offering a perspective of chosen families and biological families that is completely unseparated, right? You just talked about how your mother um, kept your sisters away from you, like how you didn't get to be with them
Right.
in your first years. And I think that now with this project, you're really pushing against that experience, and you're claiming a space for an experience of family and friendship and camaraderie and kinship and professional peership, if I can invent a word, that is structured around coming together and being together in a fluid way that maybe can only happen through photographs.
Well, that's how it's happening for me,
Yeah.
right? Like I mean, we can't. It's difficult to export our kind of conditions and ideas into other people's experiences, because we all have kind of some unique path about
Yeah.
how we get to where we are, right? And so for me to begin to be open around, family, and now being older, and I have kids, and understanding, truly what it means, to have familial support What does
Yeah.
that look like? And in my case, to want that for my kids, and to even be able to kind of start to try to shape some set of ideas around it. Like, honestly, I've gone a very long time not having a very accurate idea of
Mm,
how family is supposed to work,
mm.
right? So literally, I went through a 25-year marriage and I'm divorced now. And, shocking because I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, who of us knows what we're doing, Ali? We
Well,
don't know what we're doing.
but that's where the other people come in. It's like, all right, I'm not saying, you're going to get straight to your destination, but I can warn you, there's 2 or 3 cliffs you might want to avoid.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
I hear you. I hear you.
And
Absolutely.
so just that, like having family, members say things out loud, how they don't have need or reason to necessarily be gentle with you when a harsher take is what's necessary, and what you don't question is that you are loved and you are accepted and you are embraced. So however these people may be going about critiquing you, it's coming from a place of observation, recognition, and acceptance.
Yeah.
I know who you are. I know what you're capable of. I know what we've been taught, right? And you're not doing those things, and you're making it bad for the rest of us. Right?
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
conversely, look at your brother. He thinks this, he feels that, and in the worst ways, kids can be made to be competitive. And I'm not saying that the difficult things don't arise out of that, but in my case, it made me feel invisible,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't anybody's intention. It's just that my mother had a lot of kids. I
A
was
lot of
number
kids.
8 out of 8, and my brother and sister were just old enough to have a rapport with each other, and then I was the baby, right? So I'm coming into a family where the mother has had 3 boys. One is gone, and the other she's fearful about her relationship around, and the third one she feels like she needs to be kind of hands off because she doesn't really trust her instincts in raising boys because of a tragedy.
Yeah.
Right. And then in terms of who the girls are, all the other girls are, in a family with another guy. So I don't really know them. So I don't have sisters. And the one sister that's in the house is talking to the person who can actually talk, not the baby.
Yeah. 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 Sounds
Right.
like a dynamic for sure. Yeah.
Right. So it's like just you're coming into this space where, where there are bridges that should be there, but they're gone,
Mhm.
and then there are not necessarily walls, but there are conditions that don't really foster the sort of connection that I needed or wanted or was looking for.
Yeah.
And so even in my own house, I fundamentally grew up feeling like an outsider, right? So in a weird way, I'm really comfortable at being really, really close to people, and yet not necessarily being hyper connected, not doing a lot of things with them. I'm a very accustomed to being around, but not, people requiring much from me or not even wanting to do very much. But I want to contribute, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, look at my pictures. Hey, everybody look at the picture. Don't look at me.
But it's more than that. I mean, the pictures, you just talked about the experience of feeling invisible. And then, your main practice becomes storytelling, visual storytelling, and photography, for crying out loud. Like there's a deep connection there between
There it is.
constantly feeling invisible. And a lot of photographers talk about that too, like that idea that maybe within your own life you're feeling invisible, but then you have this tool that helps you articulate a point of view of the world without necessarily putting yourself in front of the lens. Like you kind of claim that place of invisibility, but still giving yourself a voice.
Yeah, well, the thing about the work, the writing and TV film, and specifically the photography, is that I understand the power of images, right? The reason that I'm a photographer is because when I was, early in my teens, maybe 13, 14, something like that, my brother had made a photograph of 3 of my older sisters.
Hmm.
And, I guess at the time, they were in their early 20s, mid 20s, you know, and I can see it in my head right now, right? It's three of my four older sisters, and they're together, and they all like kind of like shoulder to shoulder. They kind of look like a singing group or something like that. And the photo was an 8 by 10. It was black and white, and they all just had these gentle, easy expressions. And the thing that struck me was it felt real,
Mm,
right? It like you know, there were plenty of magazines in the house. You know, I used to look at Life magazine. My mother got that all the time. There was a fashion magazine called Look, and she had a ton of those. So I was very accustomed to seeing fashion and some of these other things. But that photograph was different,
mm,
right? It's like because I first of all I knew them, right? And then I felt like these were expressions I'd seen. The circumstance didn't feel foreign. It wasn't removed from who I was,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And suddenly became, oh, you can do that. So I started out taking pictures of my friends, right? Those are my earliest photographs. It's just me in the house. I got a Minolta XGM. I was working at a toy store. I don't know, it cost $200 or something like that. And I remember I got a Vivitar lens. I think, and I think it wasn't like a good length, but I think I was impressed by the numbers. So I think I had like a 70 to 300 or a 70-200 Vivitar zoom lens on the Minolta. It's taking pictures inside with a 3.5 aperture in the dark.
That sounds delightful. That sounds great.
Yeah. So I got a
Everywhere.
lot of, but I did, and I just kind of got to, and I wasn't even learning. I wasn't learning about photography,
Mhm, mhm.
right? I was just recording, with this device,
Yes.
right? And I got interested in the devices, but it was a very long time before I actually, got any real functional practical training. There's no internet, it's just film and twisting knobs and
Hoping
and
for the best.
I bought a roll of Pan 50 color, went and shot that and didn't understand why I was like, it's really bright outside. Why is this film so blurry? I know slow speed, none of that stuff. But the memories and the moments and the circumstances, even still, evoke certain sensibilities and memories, you know. Yeah, because that just became that was the way in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's bring that back into Everybody Hates Chris too. I mean, the show, and you've touched upon that a little bit. The show was really pivotal for the representation of Black experience in popular culture. Um, I'm curious, how do you think about that now? What space did that experience open up for you, and how you think about your own family history, and in broader terms too, like for the collective understanding of family history?
Well, the thing I think we did on television that was markedly different from the shows that had come before was, both Chris's sensibility and my own had been informed by a bit of absurdity,
Mm,
like we both like some odd and crazy things. Like he's like this huge Woody Allen fan, and and he would look back at some of those early films and how Woody Allen broke conventions and styles and put animation and voiceovers and and doing a whole movie with a soundtrack that he re-recorded. So there was just all of these sort of deconstructions of form, that he was familiar with. And a lot of my influences were like, I love the Marx Brothers and Monty Python and,
mm,
and really like these really absurdist, and actually quite literal, styles of comedy. There was a lot of sarcasm and satire and irony and those sorts of things, and so I think that blend for us, giving a Black family this sort of elevated voice, right?
mm,
They were in a circumstance that was very familiar, working class neighborhood, Black people, and all of the things economics related. But that's not what we were leaning into,
yeah,
right? We
yeah,
were leaning into this full expression. How are these people different? What do they ignite in each other? What are the tropes that we kind of want to play with? Oh, she's the loudmouth little sister. How do we push that to an extreme, right? Let's make her fun and cute, but also diabolical in a certain way.
She was
right?
diabolical.
Right. And Chris is like, my younger brother has a good time, but he has a good time. And we're mirroring what kind of happens between Chris and Tony. And he's like, yeah, Tony's having a life that I wish I could have. He's got all of he does the stage and the jokes. He drives a nice car, all of this stuff. He doesn't have half the trouble. Right. So it's just, he just kind of leaned into that. And so we were also bringing these two experiences of the youngest, who's me, and the
Mhm.
oldest, who's him.
Yeah.
And we just were able to flesh out this family. We were able to have the kids talk to each other like kids talk to each other, when adults aren't around.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
smart.
Absolutely.
They've been watching. They know what's going on in the house. They know mom and dad. They know Mad. They know the history, right? They've been sitting there watching the whole thing. You think they didn't hear you screaming in the room the other night? They heard. Yeah, and they're making decisions about that, and they're taking ideas in from the world and wondering how they should move forward with things. And so,
Mhm.
to really see kids thinking and like I say, having a level of expression and experience that was really rooted and grounded in the reality. We didn't gloss it over and make it fun, and we didn't solve all the problems in an easy way. People got their feelings hurt, they got their
Yeah.
hearts broken, crimes were committed. All of these things, but showing how in those circumstances you still find your laughter and you still find your love, you still find your connectedness, you still find your intimacy. This is what it looks like when a man is putting in his efforts for his family. And that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that the relationship that he has with his wife, won't have certain stresses and strains, but how do they go about resolving them? What does that look like? And what does it look like 5 days after the argument?
After. Yeah.
Right? Oh, you mean people get mad at each other, they cool off because can't nobody go anywhere, they reboot, and then they start the process all over again. And you can do that for decades. But you got to go through the complete cycle, right?
So it's interesting. I mean, you talk about how you were articulating like a complete experience for the family dynamics, but that also your creative experience as a co-creator and director was also complete in the sense that you've both allowed yourselves to bring in influences by everything that you've loved
Yeah.
and allowed yourself to bring that into the creation of the show.
And have it be embraced,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. Because sometimes you can have, weird sensibilities and quirks and those sorts of things. And sometimes they can be a little bit too out there, and so
Mhm.
people might have a hard time. They're not quite sure where the humor is coming from. But I think in our case, we made these things that were a little absurdist, and at times even a tad hyper intellectual, but we were able to ground them out and connect them to what was happening in these people's
Yeah,
lives. Right.
absolutely.
And I mean, that goes back to the work that we've been doing when we were on the HBO show, because we would do things like, it's like black people see the same news that white people see. Right. When Princess Diana died, we saw that. We heard about it. Right.
It
But
happened.
but
Yeah.
what happened in our neighborhood was
Mhm.
different.
Yeah.
Right. And so to be able to go, this is our attachment to the world writ large. Like, we put our people in the world that everybody else was in. We weren't in some ghetto enclave where the only things happening were between this street and that street, and if you didn't go over there, if you didn't go, don't come to the ghetto, don't stay in the ghetto, or whatever they used to say. Right. It's like, no, you could come to the ghetto, you could see what's in there, and then you could go home.
Yeah.
Some people come there and work, and then they go back to their house and do their grocery stores, and a currency exchange where you go in, you can pay your light bill, a check cashing place is what they call it out east. Right. So we just wanted to normalize everything about all of it.
Yeah.
I'm
I
not special because I have this sense of humor. I'm not special because I saw this thing. I'm not special because I know about ballet or classical music or what type of sauce goes on, potatoes au gratin or whatever it is. I can draw from all of it.
Yeah,
We're whole people. And that's what I've always wanted to be, because in a lot of ways, my experience is one of segmentation.
absolutely. I wonder too, you and I talked about how there's in the past couple of years, there's been a resurgence for Everybody Hates Chris, and suddenly younger generations rediscover the show. Um, my oldest, who's 11 years old, when he heard that we're gonna be working together, he was, "Oh my god."
Oh
I
wow.
love the show. I wonder, what do you make of that? What is it in this show that was created in the pre-algorithmic era when we were all literally still watching the same news and getting the same information about the world? What is it about this show that still makes it resonate in this way, you think?
Well, I think first and foremost is that it really is grounded,
Hmm.
right? So you when we did the show, which is early 2000s, it was already a period piece. So we were making it, we were drawing from the experiences, from and leading up to that. So early 80s, what have you, up
Mhm.
until early 2000s. But our approach was also forward thinking in terms of what and how we were creating. So a lot of the written humor that we were doing, a lot of the absurdist things that we were doing, you know, we were precursors for where Dave Chappelle would eventually get to go, where Key and Peele would eventually get to go, what Donald Glover was doing on Atlanta, just ways of being absurdist, introspective, really investing into your world, being able to flip it, twist it, try things, take bits of culture and put it where it didn't belong. Like, yeah, we're referencing an officer and a gentleman, and we're putting stuff in this show about whatever the deer hunter and and the Sopranos, like, and we're drawing from popular current culture,
Yeah.
dipping it into a show about the past in a way that really isn't prevalent, so it's forward thinking. So when you get 5-10 years into the future, maybe even 20 like we are now, it doesn't feel so old.
Yeah.
Right? It was always constructed to feel timeless.
Mm. Mm. So let's talk about the title of the exhibition then. That's very provocative, right? Everybody hates exhibitions. What is it about for you?
The first thing that happened is that, comedy is a defense, you know. Um, it's a way for you know, comedians particularly
Hmm.
to, just to guard, safeguard their feelings, and also the safest way to express outrage,
Hmm.
right? And in the Everybody Hates Exhibitions, the desire to not comport, you know, comedians specialize in not being part of the group. We have to stand outside of it so that we can critique it. But what happens if you get, popular enough or successful enough or on enough, whatever it is, to be in the group? Now, what do you do? Right. And so the first instinct to kind of make fun of this thing that, that I really truly desire to be taken seriously in is growth, but then to explore the reaction and go, what is this really? And then I go, oh, it's kind of the thesis of my adult life. Most people that know me casually and a few people that know me well have said on more than one occasion that I'm a hard read. Okay. They talk to me and whatever, and they're not quite sure what I'm feeling, thinking. That's because I've been guarding, my thought process. I'm probably overly diplomatic, you know,
Hmm.
uh, always kind of sorting through ideas and shifting and trying to figure and not quite wanting to be nailed down. And a girl asked me, I went to a store the other day. She asked me what I did for a living. I said I was a writer. And then she asked me what I wrote, and I started lying because of like, ah, shit. If I tell her what it's like, I don't know. I don't want to take the chance that if I tell her what I write actually, or what she'd know, what I'm sure she knows if I tell her, I don't feel like having that conversation right now.
Yeah.
So now,
Yeah.
now she probably thinks I'm a bit of a jerk because she can probably tell I'm lying or that I don't want to tell her something. And like that's what's happening to a lot of comedians all the time.
Yeah.
Just feeling exposed, being exposed, and the title is just about leaning into the very idea, not just of showing people my work, but showing people myself.
Yourself. So let's bring photography into that. How can we think about this in relation to the role that photography plays in our daily lives when we're constantly performing online or in real life, when we constantly have, we just talked about selfies a little bit earlier, right? Like, how do we bring that idea of announcing the, not the refusal, but the problematics of being constantly on? How do we bring that into photography too?
You know, there's so many devices and there's so many people who are making images now, right? Everybody's got a camera in their pocket, and on the one hand, that's wonderful, in an individualistic kind of way, but the unfortunate sort of consequence of that is that most people devalue the worth of their images, right? They make pictures of so many things so often that it just becomes this little, this ones and zeros behind this little screen, and you're just scrolling, and you're looking for something. You're looking for the one that matters,
Mm.
right? There's so many people that go, oh, I got a picture, and then they pull up their phone and they start scrolling, sliding 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, 5, 4, say 10,000 pictures. Then they find out, oh, here it is, right? And I'm like, well, what are those other 10,000 pictures? And so, you make images, for memory, and as time goes by, the value of any and all of them,
Mhm.
can increase. But unfortunately, the reverence for that, doesn't kick in sometimes until it's too late.
Yeah.
Right. I lost the phone. I didn't print. I had a picture like I there's a photograph I made with Chris a couple of decades ago now. He was hosting the Billboard Awards in Las Vegas. And I had my camera with me, and I was, during rehearsals, I was shooting. And I made this image of him. He was walking across the stage, and I was down on the floor. So, he's, 6 feet above me. And they had a big video monitor behind him.
Mm.
So, I had this layered image of him striding across the stage. And then behind him was this giant version of him. And I wanted him to have the image.
Wow.
And accidentally, I think I put the negatives in the enlargement that I was sending him, and they got lost in the mail.
Boy. Boy.
Right. But
That's
but as vividly as I'm able to describe this image to you, like that was 25 years ago, and
and now my heart is broken as though it has just happened
right?
yesterday.
And I can still, and that's the power of certain images, And
Yeah.
so I just think that sometimes we could put a little more value into the things that both that we're experiencing firsthand, and then what it is about those things that we might want to record secondhand. Like I go to concerts and people just video, and they post the video so that they can get the attention from having been at the thing, right?
Yes.
But it's not anything genuinely connected to them, you know because
Yeah.
what are you going to do with 47 seconds of Taylor Swift doing like this, and you were in the seventh row, and that's great, and you turn around, you go and then that's the thing. That's it. That's everything.
Yeah. That's I had a student once that told me that when she sees people do that at shows, when they constantly just video, she goes and stand next to them and sings very loudly off key so that that is what they will have. I want to also bring that back to the show. um thinking about performativity and the exhaustion of constantly being on. I can't help but thinking about that also in relation to family structures too, and how the space of the domestic space is supposed to be the space where you can just be you and don't have to be on. but that sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Well, in both circumstances, the other thing that happens, and I've spoken around this before, is that in the space of being on, suddenly this proliferation of devices, and this understanding that 1984 happened and there are cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
So everyone is already hyper aware in some ways about the idea that they're being photographed or recorded. But then they also are very comfortable in the understanding that that's going on. So what has happened, or at least in my experience, is that the shift occurs, right? So now if I'm out, at a thing or walking down the street or whatever, and I lift an actual camera to my eye,
Hmm.
People go, "What are you taking a picture of?" Meanwhile, standing around me, 18 people with phones would zoom in on the building across the street in slow-mo and posing and selfies. Like everybody around you has a camera taking a picture of something. And they're like, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm doing what everybody else is doing." Right. But somehow it becomes that device that you're using is different than the one that we're using.
Yeah.
And so that you have it and that you're using it says that what you're doing has some greater level of importance than what we're doing. And that distinction is true,
Yeah, for sure.
right? I am doing something different than what you're doing, and being able to find a way to fade back a little bit or find a way to shoot. There are times that I kind of learned how to shoot from the hip in certain ways so I don't disturb moments,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Every now and again, I would walk up to somebody and go, "Hey, something about you, XYZ, and, you mind if I took," but that's typically not how I like to shoot. You know, I'd much rather make a photograph and somebody go, "Hey, what's going on?" Then well, I'm a photographer and I do this, and sometimes I show them, some of the work and those sorts of things. But ideally, I get to take the picture and keep moving. But people, the way that people have become self-aware, but oddly in reverse.
Hmm.
We record ourselves, we photograph ourselves, we post ourselves relentlessly, but we also want to retain the power over our image. We don't want somebody else to take a picture of me standing out in the street dancing, but certainly I'm about to, and the fact that I'm outside and that everybody can see me, that's not
I
right.
want to
Because
have a picture of you standing in the street dancing, Ali. That's all I can tell you. Yep.
yeah, it's like I'm in a bubble. I'm recording my TikTok. Nobody else is invited. This is going to go up on my post. But if you take a picture of me doing this, I go, "Hey,
Hey.
what are you doing?"
Yeah.
She said.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I just think we're having this very odd experience around what it means to share, things of our private lives, our personal lives
Mm.
that we have developed and curated our public selves, right? And we have demonstrated how we'd like to be seen versus how we appear. And I'm guilty of it myself,
Yeah.
but I just don't want either set of images largely out in public. I don't want the ones they took or the ones I took either.
Yeah. So how do you want people to feel in the space, in the exhibition when they come in? What type of experience do you want them to have?
If I could control it, the time would slow down,
Hmm.
right? Just slow down, not stop. I don't need to take you backwards, but just be able to feel this energy that evokes a certain sort of memory, you know, a familiarity, with whether it's with colors or spaces or with ideas. What was peculiar to me about a lot of the images after I started to look at them is that I was surprised at how often, uh, the cast and different people on set who would be subject to these photos. I was surprised at how often they were looking directly at me
Hmm.
and how rarely they performed. right? Because a lot of times if you're not too familiar with people and you point a camera at them, the first thing they do is they do a thing, right? Here's my picture of face. And I don't know why. This was never a discussion I had with anyone,
Hmm.
right? But however it is that I moved in the way of making the images and the people, the subjects that I would, come upon, and they would notice me for just that little split second.
Yeah.
Man, it's so many images I'm taken back, and I almost feel like maybe people can feel like they're standing where I'm standing,
Mm.
right? And if you get a little bit of a sense of the circumstance, do you feel yourself in that mood, in that room, in that moment? Because a lot of the moments are just really quiet exchanges, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and so if I would hope that people are able to, just kind of slide into that space a little bit and be in that, for themselves, not even for me, not with me, but
Yeah.
just for themselves, be able to feel the warmth of certain expressions, you know, the sort of simplicity of certain gazes, or really even just to be able to respect the relaxing
Mm.
of an expression. These are actors, a lot of them, right? And so these moments when they stop acting and they're just being a person on a set wearing some clothes, and on this day their name is something, but they stop being that sometime in between. And those are these other moments that I feel like I tapped into, because these aren't moments, primarily where I'm taking photographs while they're performing a scene.
Yeah.
They may be about to, they may have just stopped, they may have, right? So these are all of these moments are distinctly, you know, for me, distinctly human moments by and large, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that's kind of where I hope the connection is for people.
I I so agree. That was so beautiful, and I think that we were thinking about the space as something that we hope would feel very welcoming, so that people could bring in their own experience of like their own chosen families, right, and
Yeah.
their own ways of how they think about how they exist in the world. And I think you're right. There's so many um loving eyes in the show that look at you and kind of invite you in. So I agree with you. I really hope that people will feel that too. And maybe
Yeah.
just one last question.
Okay.
You know, as I shared with you, I feel really grateful that we got to work on this project.
Thank you.
Also, because I know that it signals a bigger moment for you um, on your own creative path. Can we talk a
Yes,
little bit
ma'am.
about that? How do you think about this moment within your practice?
I've had a couple of solo shows before, and this one is different, for me. In the other shows I was, showing some other work, and really kind of learning how to present myself, and how to, take myself seriously
Hmm.
as an artist. It's been, a time learning how to talk about my work, feeling comfortable, in the presence and in exchanges with other artists. And as much as I've been doing, what study and work and practice, in my craft as I can, I'm looking for, I'm looking for some acceptance,
Mm.
right? This is something I've done for a very long time, and it's something that I would like to be able to share, in a space with other artists who are working in kind, and also whether it's collectors and a larger audience. Some of this work, I genuinely, I'm hoping to get into the Smithsonian. I think it belongs there, right? I mean, it's had cultural impact. I have it. I have it,
Yeah, you
right?
do.
And that in and of itself, matters. And so, at some point, I'm wanting to have those conversations, that this work can be protected and shared. And again, even in terms of my place, the fact that I made it is how I endure, right?
Mm. Mm.
uh And so whether I'm able to take this and, I want to scale and start going into the other bodies of work that I have, because we're in a digital era now. We're in AI, like it's not even SD cards,
Yeah.
right? So now it's like, oh yeah, everything that you made before 2026, suddenly, if you can timestamp that and say, these are real moments, these are real things, this is not, digitally generated, this is not artifice, right? I've got all of this work and I've been to all of these places. And I think that the work has something to say. And now, after all of my life experiences, and I'm still in them, but I feel like I'm ready to share that and talk about it, invite some people in, and maybe get myself freer than I've ever been.
Hmm. Well, I'm so delighted that we got to do this and that we got to create the space to invite people in and experiencing that for themselves. So thank you so much, Ali. And
Thank
we
you.
will open the show this Thursday, April
This
2nd.
Thursday, we'll be there.
Ah,
We'll have crackers and wine.
oh my gosh, it'll be so fun. At 6 p.m. at LACP. And if people want to have another opportunity to meet you in person, you're
Yep.
going to be giving a walkthrough on April 11 at 12 p.m. as part of our Analog Con.
Analog.com. Bring your film cameras.
Oh my gosh, the biggest festival for all things analog in LA. I will share links to all of those beautiful things. Ali, thank you so much. And
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
thank you, Ali. Talk to you
All
soon.
right.
Bye.
You guys. Bye.